sells by the seashore. She sells shells by the seashore. She sells shells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells by the seashore. She tells incels to get roped door. Hello? Is this thing on? Tap, 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 tap. Is this thing on? Tap, 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 tap. Oh, lovely. Great thing. Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and lords and gentlemen. The man has gone to the Grippy Sock Factory, and I have come back to bring you more news. Go ahead and throw on your hoods. Today's finna be wife with this one. All this and more, only on Carltoon Network. Because why would you need to go out to the store to go buy Carl for fast food when you can have Carl at home? Kappa. Anyways, we've got a lot of news today. Lots and lots of news. Ironically, almost all of this is gaming-based news. The voices is great. The voice is okay. It's good enough. That's all it needs to be. And it is the 15th. And you know what that means. It means movie nights. Movie nights is going to start being held, as well as community group gaming being held at the same time that I hold versus chats, which means anytime after news broadcasting from 6 to 10 p.m. There might be special occasions where I might do it throughout the day, but 6 to 10 p.m. Tonight's movie is Space Jam, chosen by the server, and you are gonna love what I've chosen for Carl's choice. No, you will not. You will be very fucking angry at me, and you will hate me for every single fiber of my being for having done so. However, you haven't gotten there yet. My screen is dirty. I'm gonna go get a washcloth. I didn't clean that off. Meanwhile, the ghost running all the water in my house. Why is the ghost running all the water in my house? I paid for that water. We all pay for that water. And remember, chat, if you ever think that your screen is not dirty enough, open up a normal paint program with a white background and just look at the specks that land on your screen. That's all dirt, dust, spit and spittle, and occasional cough projectiles. Wipe it down. Wipe it down. Look at pristine LCD screens here, chat. Anyways. Gaming news. A little bit of political news. And we will be going over the recent Substack post from friend of the channel, Nick Monroe. Better known as NickMon1112. Better known as Lobster Looker, and better known as Crab Crawler, and many other handles that he's had over the years, who's been an investigative journalist that has been on the shit list of the bad individuals of Twitter, as well as Trust and Safety, who is now fighting to get his account back, and is someone who needs his story told. While I am only a figure of moderate size, I have promised to do everything that I could in my power to make sure my homie can make his way back to the timeline. Just as we did with Mr. Marvel and all his fanboy delights, I have done for years on end to hold the torch, and I am not dropping that shit now whatsoever. Yeah, anyway. Let's get into the news. Let's get into the news. Zip. And now for some better Kino. 90s kids know exactly what the soundtrack is. Anyways. First up, let Super Earth burn. The news story sourced by none other than Bolster from the server. And if you, too, would like to be able to help with bringing news and attention to my eyes, consider becoming a member of the single-player Carl and company Discord. Directly fund your cringe live on television. Let Super Earth burn. Helldivers 2 players are committing treason to protest this latest patch, allowing a tide of bots to creep worryingly close to home. The latest Helldivers 2 patch has gone down as smoothly as a gas full of napalm, chiefly due to some nerfs to the flamethrower, which has sparked a full-on wildfire of criticism so bad the CEO of the company felt inclined to give a response. Granted, this is more important to know that the CEO that is currently the CEO of the company is not the same person who was the original CEO, as he has moved to creative. One fascinating form of protest, however, seems to be happening in the game itself thanks to game's radar for coverage. Let the boss advance, let Super Earth burn, writes one player on the game's subreddit, showing a map of the galactic war with an automaton front that's coming a little bit close to Super Earth. Together we banished the bug tyranny of Meridia, but you betrayed me, you betrayed us all. You stole power from Helldivers and you lied to your citizens. Mankind only has one chance to prosper. If you will not seize it, then I will. So let it be war, from the skies to Super Earth to the galactic limb. Let the seas boil, let the stars fall. Let the stars fall, let the stars fall. This dramatic speech ripped from Warhammer 40k's trailer of the House of Heresy, referencing an event where Horus turned traitor and led a rebellion against the Emperor of Mankind. The automatons are still 2 and a bit systems away from Super Earth, but they are currently storming Curia with a grand total of 13 to 1,500 players, loyal to Super Earth on the time of writing, and as per of Helldivers IO, the matchmaking list that shows you the actual gain and loss on planets, it is losing the battle at a rate of 1.2 per hour, meaning there's not enough players on the planet to stall the generation timer, meaning they are slowly conquering the lattice lines and moving ever so closer to Super Earth. This is a spanner in the works for this particular narrative, named the current major order task of preventing truce and Vadalon 4, the idea being that one would assume to create a situation where players would need to balance a war on 2 fronts. This meaning one of 4 things are happening. 1. The player base is MMO brain and is simply following the big markers, which is not necessarily true. Because the problem with Helldivers 2 means a play is that any player can go anywhere at any time, but because of how major orders work, the player incentive is to get the reward. So, if they're not making a choice and statement, they're going to play the game normally, especially if they are not a part of the protest. 2, they're trying to Zerg rush 2 planets before returning to the Super Earth front, which in and of itself can just be confirmed by looking at Helldivers.io, which we will currently at this point in time. The lattice lines that exist are effectively... Oh, wow, crazy. Not even a lattice line update. I wonder why that is. There we go. The lattice line increases are shown clearly when you actually turn them on to be looked at. If it still has that choice, yes it does. After players, supply lines, war stats. As you can clearly see from the lattice lines here, should this be on screen properly, there is no lattice line that exists between the layers of the planets that allow them to come closer to what is currently happening and what is currently empty. As you can see, the air around Super Earth has no actual lattice lines. There are not technically people on Super Earth, unless that's counted as a tutorial, but who really knows at this point? Point of the matter is, as of 19 seconds counting ago, this is the current battle lines that are being held by the original people from the position of Cyberstan. When they originally brought down the destruction of Meridia, created the black hole, and led for Demenrex Prime and Cyberstan to be the new lattice lines as we killed out the rest in the remaining forces that were across Manatees, Maya, Avalon Creek, Durgan, Ubania, Dropnir, Montes, Populus 6, Populus 9, Vanwon 4, Ingmar, Mort, Troost, Usotsu, Chesapeake, and otherwise in the varying outline borders. Players are effectively losing on Curia at a rate which the enemy forces are always going to have the rate happen. Because the Super Earth forces need to beat out the enemy forces, if that number is less than the negative that exists in our That is how losses are accrued and counted. So, at some point of the time, because there are currently a total of 37k players in the game right now, the majority of the battle lines are being held across from what is obviously a few places on the map, namely a lost hold at Curia, a lost hold at Krimska, and a lost hold at Galakrix. As you can see here on the planet of Galakrix, let me zoom back in, you can see that the actual player number is at a point where the regeneration and the efficiency is lower than the actual liberation count. Player count obviously dropped at some point during the time at 947 to 906, leading past 10, and here, where the line of regeneration was set by Joel, the Game Master, the regeneration of the planet is too high for the actual liberation number to be counted as a constant. So, regardless of the liberation amount, if this number is ever lower, then it doesn't matter. Period. That's how the numbers work. Hello. That's how the numbers work. So, the problem is less that there are people who are doing these things for whatever reason, and it's more to do with the fact that it is, 3, a malicious act of heretical compliance by overcommitting to a front, or a desire to ignore the front, which, considering that there are more players that like to fight against the bugs than there are to fight against the bots, because fighting against bots are hard, and fighting against the bugs is easy, they're gonna go with the easier of two means. Period. It's just the truth of the matter. All of this being more on the back of patch issues and bugs and nerfs for reasons that I've already described are the cause of this. Yesterday I showed one of them. Namely, you have people, even with the introduction of the newest difficulty, that they're going to tell you that you need to be playing what they consider to be the strong meta, otherwise they're kicking you off their ship. I will say, however, this is a pithy defense of 2k players as a cause for concern, given that the game has currently 38k, presently scrapping the bots. Helldivers Q has already jokingly tempted players to lose on purpose, but what happens if they actually do? It's a damn fine question. It was actually very possible for players to use the Galactic War wholesale. Democracy would simply just find a new Super Earth, stake its claim, and move on. However, those wars were long lost in the span of about a month, with Helldivers 2 still being embroiled in its very first, and I'm not even actually sure what happens. The enemy can take Super Earth at all. Realistically, because this game is being narratively written, if the designers and developers didn't really want the bugs and the bots to go to a certain line, why do I still hear running water? Because I do! If the designers wanted the design of the game to be held around what is concurrently the system that they use, which is they decide when the wars happen, they decide to play off the reaction to what's happening, don't redress things outside the game, inside the game, but actually address them in a roundabout way, such as the creation of the sales cape, or the creation of the event to get people to get the fuck off of Babylon Creek, because they really refuse to play any other line other than Space Vietnam, or the destruction of Meridia as a super colony, by using a black hole to get rid of its content. All of these things are the way that they choose to address and actually make things about the game. So, if they actually want to be able to address the problems of the game, the easiest way for them to be able to do this is for them to be able to just simply address it in that fashion. But of course they have not done so, because this is an out-of-game problem for an in-game problem being addressed to those people out of the game, in the game. Players are basically protesting the game by not playing the bot front. So, the bots slowly crush any imposition, thus rendering any major order about fighting the bots null and void. Because even if there are players that are willingly still playing the game, the people who remain playing the game are actively using it as an opportunity to get attention for themselves, instead of just stop playing the game entirely and leaving and doing something else. This is why I had the take the other day about, if you see news about the game, why not just play a different game? Why do you keep re-essentializing and reigniting a talking point, allowing your voice to be used by actual grifters who aren't even playing the game in question? More on that in a bit. Because all you're really doing is putting it back in the news constantly. There's no reason for it to be in the news. Either the game is living and it's going to have content and they're going to address the problem and it's going to move on, and the people who do play the game in the small numbers that they do play, just like those on Tribes of Midgard or any other game that suffers something like this, or was released to a particular type of audience, will live, die, have the servers, make the servers, close the servers, and continue existing in a state where you don't have to worry about those problems. Either it will happen in that way or it won't happen in that way. doing what most people have been doing has been actually cascading the issue into something that it does not need to be. Which brings us to the actual lattice lines, as you can clearly see pictured here. And as you can see, people locking this on Super Best Friends Play because of people are being unable to talk seriously, as of 2 seconds ago, about the issue without being fucking spurgs. Hello, Bloodwolf. Which then brings us to the Steam post. My fellow Helldivers, I want to directly address this feedback that you raised about escalation of freedom. We have spent the last week listening to feedback, reflecting about the path ahead for Helldivers 2 and how we want to continue developing games. In short, we didn't hit our target with the latest patch. Some things didn't get right, and others more fundamental inconsistencies in our approach to game balance as well as game direction. All of that is on us, and we are going to own that. As many of you have pointed out, and we agree, what matters most is action, not talk. To that end, here's what we intend to do with the upcoming updates. Our aim within the next 2 months, technically 60 days, so technically 2.5, but let's be conservative and say 2 to 3 months. Continue to re-examine the approach to balance. Intention is that balance should be fun, not balanced for the sake of balance. Update how fire damage mechanic works to tweak how the flamethrower serves as a close-range support weapon. What is straight revert not working because it would be breaking other things, which is more than likely the case if I had to guess at it. Rework gameplay to prevent excessive ragdolling, so you're not going to get hit by something and sent flying with the sound effect of "Whoa!" I can't even do the sound effect. But you're not going to be sent flying laughing like Goofy, and you're not going to have the effect of you get hit by one thing, and because you got ragdolled, you're getting mogged on by everything else that you should have been able to react to because you should have been knocked down by the hit in the first place. Rethink the design approach to primary weapons and create a plan for making combat more engaging. Reprioritize bug fixes so the immediate gameplay impacting bugs can be prioritized first. Rework the chargers, Lord have mercy, and improve game performance because the frame rate needs to become a focus. Additionally, bigger picture perspectives will be exploring and creation of an opt-in beta environment for improving test processes and considering this to be a high priority. So there's a good chance that there might actually become an official public beta test portal. Post regular player surveys to gain more insights and feedback from the community. Improve the processes for patch and release notes, providing more context and reason behind the changes, with more blog posts and streams to expand upon and show the topics for what is interested, and also thanking people for the patience. Well, people should be grateful to the provided constructive criticism and feedback and suggestions on the latest updates. Look at that discussion. I honestly don't know what reworking charges would mean, but I have to imagine that means they're going to rework the Boolean script that actually controls charger behavior. Because I think the problem with charger behavior is that chargers, as all heavy enemies function, are a pressure tool that does not need to exist in the way that they do. Whenever you're dealing with a pack, the most dangerous thing in that pack is not ever the charger. It's the predators. It's the stalker variants. It's the predators, it's the hunters, it's the stalkers, and it's, if they're present, nursery and biospewers. Never is the charger the biggest problem until you're getting mobbed by the smaller enemy pack that's approaching you. It's more dangerous to be attacked by a stalker variant pack that's being led by a brood commander than it is the particular 1 to 2 charges that can be in between that pack. Originally, at the launch of the game, I could say, yeah, without access to the spear or the railgun, using leg meta, it was considered hard. But that's because people didn't understand that they could solo man the recoilless rifle yet. And, even if they were two-manning the recoilless rifle, or the autogun did not succeed in its job, because it was not meant for bugs, it was meant for bots. And even if they were using it to try and close bug holes at a rate, this was easily done by a single man with a railgun who had his own interstellar backpack and either incendiary or slugger, taking out those packs one at a time and then dealing with the charges by themselves, putting them down and moving through the pack at a speed that most could not actually counter against. I know, I played it with my own incendiary at the time. They did not compare in speed. Ever since then, on the current patch cycle that exists now, charges are a joke. They can be taken out at long range, they can be taken out at short range. They can be taken out at medium range. They can be taken out in the same haze as a stratagem, whether they choose to use an aggressive stratagem or a damage stratagem. But the fact of the matter is, chargers are not a problem. They never really have been a problem in a conservative manner that actually matters for their ability to do anything, period. And in the world where people now understand that the expendable anti-tank rockets are the go-to mold that should always be in any support loadout, let alone on any additional loadout, there's no world where you don't have 2 rockets to put a charger's ass in the ground. Granted, you should only actually need to use 1, so you can have another one on your back, which means if you're using that as your dependent weapon, and you're switching off whenever you need them, so you have a dedicated weapon that will always be regenerative, let's say the Arc Thrower, and then you're having eats. This gives you the ability to not only deal with putting a rocket in a charger's mouth, but it also helps you deal with the pack that's also pushing on you, which now frees up your primary weapon and your secondary weapon for whatever purpose they need to exist for. I would argue that the problem that exists with all of the gameplay thus far is that you do not have answers on your primary and secondary for dealing with bot fabricators, technically. Some do, but they're a niche and they're a choice, and it severely limits your ability to then fight packs and groups as a whole. X-Bow is kind of a solution for this. Maybe Grenade Pistol could probably be a solution for this, but in my opinion, the problem is there is not an answer that I can have as a primary weapon on my build, let alone as a support weapon, let alone as a drop tool, that says, I point this at a charger, our charger dies. Why? Because they all have heavy penetration armor. They have to be penetrated with a support weapon. This, I believe, was the original intention and design, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for you to be able to destroy, just talking about the bots alone, it doesn't make sense for you to be able to destroy a charger or a Bile Titan with just the use of something with medium penetration. Why would that be fair? But of course, players being players and actively playing how they have, and how I expect them to, have decided to go the route of complaining about everything as though they're problems, when they might, honestly, not be. And I, for one, would like there to be a choice. I am not saying they need to rework it around what my ideas are, but what I am saying is, I would like there to be a choice that says, yeah, you can definitely deal with a charger with this, and not really anything else, because it reloads too slowly, and its damage is really unfocused, but you should have the ability to do it, period. There are multiple guns that have this, such as the Eruptor, or the fucking, I'm forgetting the name of it, but the Quantum, the Quasar. Quasar, recoilless, leg meta era railgun, current meta era level charged railgun with even less capabilities because it requires you to now not even charge the thing properly in order for you to get the damage done, which means you're taking more time because it adds more seconds between shots, and every single second you add to that charge, that's an extra amount of time that leads to you now being pressured by those enemy packs that are moving towards you, because the charger might get stunned, but the pack behind him didn't. And there's not really anything other than a napalm strike across the ground or a gas strike with any amount of slowing fields and mines that's going to save you from the consequence of being pushed on like that. And if you're taking those emplacements, according to them, you're getting kicked from the ship because those are meta. But let's go to the comments. Just because the mouse is next to the game doesn't mean people don't own the game. I have it on my PS5, so I can express my opinion regardless of the icon. It's ironic about how people criticize others for beating rewards, or say you don't own the game when you turn around and beg for rewards themselves. That said, please remove the region lock from the 177 countries so that everyone can enjoy the game. Thanks. Keep the game neutral. Oh, I got the hiccups. Keep the game neutral. Don't make the mistakes of adding politics, and undo the region lock. So basically, a bunch of people repeating the same talking points. Great. So pretty much, if it's not people getting monetization in glaze, it's people basically saying the same thing we've expected all of them to be saying, which I'm not surprised by at all. I'm not surprised by this reaction, since now, because it's become a viral meme, and I mean that in the worst way, because it's become a viral meme for people to jump onto the topic now and repeat the same talking points that they should have already been saying before. We're now at that point where basically the issue is they want to communicate how to do the problem and how they want to solve the problem, and most of the people are just yelling about other unrelated issues that need to be worked at in time. Because I would not say that this is the venue where you need to be screaming about what Sony needs to do, because it's not on Arrowhead, it's on Sony. They're not even organized on who they're supposed to be attacking, which again, I find sad. In Earth Defense Force, I have a rifle that fires AIF. Not a good, divided, unupdated, but deals with armored answers is good, and a missile launcher depending on the mission. Heavier enemies, blah 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 blah. I hope that statement has a point, but I'm gonna extrapolate from that yeah, design weapons can be good, they can be fun, they can have a goal, and they can be all for the purposes of what the player decides in their kit they want to have them for. And realistically, the problem with Helldivers 2 is that even with all of the war bonds that exist in the game, there is no guarantee that there are people who have all of those war bonds that are in the game. And even with having the war bonds that are in the game, there's no guarantee that those players get to use those weapons, let alone have the time to test using those weapons and all the use cases that exist. And even if they did, and there were players like myself, ever since I stopped playing, that are effectively telling them you can't use that, it's not good, despite the fact that the numbers say differently, or other intelligent players that have recorded on tape say differently. All the tricks in the trade that came from the time of Lake Meta either have disseminated into the player base and is now known knowledge, or they don't have the money or don't have the time to farm the super credits to get those packs. And if the accusation that has been levied, which is all the patch cycles are being done to nerf the recently last released war bond, so that the next war bond that has been untouched by the nerf cycle is buffed and then entices you to pay money into the game. And this is what they've been based around. I don't believe that's true, but I can see why people would argue that. Because if players have a lot of choices and options that are being nerfed into the ground, and they're not being able to get the ability to answer that, I can see why they would have that opinion. That doesn't make it fair, but I can see why they could have that opinion. In my opinion, I think that's what happens when you have people who care more about shit that doesn't matter than shit that does matter. But you know, that is what it is. That is indeed what it is. I'm keeping my eyes on that news story situation. I would suggest any of you who are keeping your eyes on it as well to please post me updates. And now for something completely different. It truly is just a sad state. But now for something completely different.
There's something weird that has happened in the gaming community. I'm serious too when I say this. For some reason, everybody in the gaming community wants...
Restart this. This guy's take. I was debating on doing a video about it, but instead, as I have the hiccups, I'm instead going to listen to it here and post this directly to the live stream timeline. Let's go.
There's something weird that has happened in the gaming community. I'm serious too when I say this.
What is it? What happened?
For some reason, everybody in the gaming community wants they want games to fail.
I mean, there are some people who are spiteful and they want games to fail, but you know, it is what it is. I wouldn't call it a community. Gaming isn't a community, it's a space. I can't believe that within that space there are larger knit and smaller tight knit communities. But just because I buy games does not mean that I am in a commune with you. I don't commune with you, because that requires me again to be someone who sees you frequently, talks to you frequently. And the fact of the matter is I don't talk to people like that do behaviors like this. I'm not speaking of Nate Shot, but speaking of the people who get incensed about nothing. But continue.
Very bizarre. Like, the whole thing with X Defiant is still, like, stumps me to this day.
X Defiant's not a good game. It is a COD/Finals replacement. And it's not a good one.
People complain about not having enough games to play, but when new games come out, even before they have played it, they're like, that game sucks, I'm not going to play it.
Can you give me some examples? Can you give me some names? I've seen different takes about this. I can have some ideas of who it is he's talking about, but I don't think you're necessarily telling the truth on this. Because what games are you talking about? Are you talking about Mortal Kombat 1? Are you talking about Helldivers 2? Are you talking about The First Descendant? Are you talking about Once Human, or are you talking about particular games that are coming from a particular spectrum of AAA development, and what these games represent and what they have in them, and blah 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 blah. Let's start there. A lot of the newer games that are coming out are garbage. Yes, they either have garbage audiences, they either have garbage communities around them, built up over time with the wrong intentions. They have content creators that are destroying the monetization and the SEO of the game into the ground, spamming the same videos about the same shit, despite the fact that no new knowledge has really been published on it, or if there is new knowledge being published, and they are the content creators creating it, they change and get the personality locked into the perspective of being hardcore players that are using try-hard mentalities, pushing casual gamers out of that space and away from the interest of being involved in the project. Or, in the case of things like Kill the Justice League, a dead-on-arrival game that isn't able to entertain, not just because of the lore and the story of the game and everything to do with its development, but also what they then choose to offer to people as the already promised DLC follow-ups that are meant to inject life into the game, yet failing to do so. These are all factors that are very, very important. You're speaking in generalizations. I need you to be specific.
Listen, man, if we keep tearing down these studios trying to make good games, like, yeah, not every single one is going to be fun and not every single one is going to be a hit. But if we're sitting here, like, preying on its downfall before the game even comes out, what do you think's going to happen? Nobody's going to be investing in gaming and making new games.
Okay, but here's the thing. I can play older games. Because I can play older games, I don't have to invest into the newer game market. The game market needs to crash. That's why most of the games suck to begin with. Label it for whatever you want. Label it as an issue of game development. Label it as an issue of activistic overreach. Label it as an issue of ESG investments gone awry with a blank check, thus forcing developers that if they want to get their blank check to make their new overly expensive video game budget, they are forced by activistic companies that act as liaisons between them and the people who make the check in question to enforce the standards and policies that they want in the work. Blame it on whatever factor you want. Blame it on the reboot, blame it on a remake, blame it on social justice, blame it on content creators and their audiences repeating dead, stale talking points that don't go anywhere. Blame it on whatever it is that you want to blame it on, but do not go and say that it's the fault of the people who are looking at it. I don't need you to bend over the table for me to find out that what you're about to put on the table is a load of shit. I don't have to wait until I see you squeezing out the turd and it plopping onto my plate to know it's garbage. But baby, that's not where you're gonna go. Let's see where you do go.
And you're not gonna have shit to fucking play. You're gonna be sitting here playing MW2 Remastered Edition. You're gonna be sitting here trying to play fucking the same old games for the 1,000th time because these billionaires and fucking multi-billion-dollar publishers, they're not gonna greenlight any new games, any new concepts, any new IP. Concepts?
Intellectual property? The majority of the last few games that have been made and published are remasters and remakes of other games. Some with over-excelsiating degrees of censorship and outright draconian censorship. Not just talking about straight-up removals and tweaks and reverts, but stealth patches, stealth releases. All of it being done not from the side of the developer, but from the publisher. Usually with the intention of crippling its sales for reasons that have less to do with actual monetization and more to do with ideology. And, again, if they do that, I have older games I can play. I do not need to worry about AAA games. Not even AA games. Not even indie games. If I get that bored, I could literally just play a new one that I made myself.
I mean, I try to put myself in the shoes of myself when I was like 16 years old, but I can't. I was excited for new games when they came out.
I mean, the older games of our generation were different to the ones that exist now. Most of the games that get made are getting made for reasons that have less to do with, I really wanted to make a concept in this universe and in this world and with this story, with this lore, and more like, I want to make a game that makes the chud seethe. And we've all seen it. Because the same people who are usually giving these takes are the same ones that have a burning hatred against those shuds and the things the shuds like.
Problem is now we have too many options. We've seen too many different games. We've seen too many different ways to interact with games. Like back in the day, bro, when in 2007, Halo 3, Gears of War 1, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare dropped the same fucking year. Bro, we were lined up outside of GameStops, whether it was in a mall or attached to a fucking Hollywood video, sitting there waiting, camped out, drinking fucking Mountain Dew, waiting for these new games.
Yeah, and that is the ecosystem that has created this current ecosystem. We were a dedicated cult following, and those dedicated cults followed their particular content creators to where they wanted to go. And they are the reason why the finals is dog shit. It is impossible to be able to get a properly well-made match and to play competitively. Not on the lack of Embark trying to, because they finally gave us the tools in Season 2, after removing Recon, because Recon not only game-breaking, but was actually balance-breaking, that it had to be removed. But players would rather scream obscenities at other people than work together in a team-based game. People would rather act like a fucking Spurglord than work together in the team-based game. Players would rather grief Prime Wars. They would rather create never-ending weeks of drama than play the video games and work together on the group-based game. Much like we talked about on the last broadcast, there were a bunch of players that go around saying, I, me, mine, now, that believe that they have the right to tell other people how they need to exist, how they need to play, and how they need to game, and how they should game things. I'm not seeing how your opinion is any different than theirs. Maybe you're coming from the other side of the argument where you're looking at them doing that and being like, bro, what are you doing? If you keep doing this, you can't make games. But at the same time, we both have an investment on wanting to see that happen. I want to see good games get made so that I can promote good games to my audience, and you want to play those good games because on the spectrum of you coming through with the amount of views that you have, with you clearly putting your view count there on the screen, you have an incentive to be an early adopter, to get in on the ground floor and make a name for yourself immediately and associate and tie your brand to it so you can get brand deals. And yet, even with things like Modern Warfare, what was the last thing that happened in the news cycle? Oh yeah, that was right, Nick Merckx getting his shit pulled, Dr. Disrespect getting his shit pulled, and while both of them got their merchandising deals pulled for different reasons, it all comes down to, you want to play new games because it is a part of our business to create content around them. But we can't create community about them because there is no community. There's just a big open space, and in that space there is a never-ending culture war. Granted, you didn't necessarily address the culture war here. You just said people in the gaming community. But people in the gaming community have been commenting on the fact that when games get released, they're getting them censored, they're getting them pulled, they're getting them shoved. You're not calling out how that has happened, and how there are companies that have been shuttered, closed, fucked over, some revived, like that of the studio for Hi-Fi Rush, which is what mogged the fuck out of and caused the closure of Forspoken and the Hand of Luminary being reabsorbed into Final Fantasy at Squeenix. You didn't talk about any of those things. And if you don't do that, it's not a matter of you didn't address the goober gay, but it is a case example of you're not seeing basic shit that's been broken down by myself, by my mutuals, by other journalists, and by even the more popular or more salient of the takes of my mutuals, if not the mutuals alone. There's like 15 different posts that I could link and put on screen, but I don't need to. My point is, this is not true. You're not being truthful. You're leaving out a part of the argument.
Now when new games come out, we're fucking sitting around a goddamn fire witch artifact, like doing a satanic ritual for the game to fail miserably. I don't really get it.
It's because the people who are doing it are spiteful. That's it. That's the take. Because they're spiteful. That's the take. Wah, wah, wah. And before this causes a firestorm. And before, chat. And before. Moving forward. Ironically enough, right here, is a perfect case example of exactly what I'm discussing and what I was talking about. I'm tired of having this conversation every 2 months. Why are video games now filled with soft porn heroines with ridiculously large breasts? Because niggas like big titty bitches. Next article, write some real fucking news. Because the Mortal Kombat 9 girls are back in the news again. The fact that Mortal Kombat girls used to look like this is still insane to me. This is literally just the take that we all keep seeing over and over again. Especially when it comes to shit that has no reason to be purported to exist for purposes that should matter. Kind of like this. Namely, person makes a take, and it's always just this picture. They get upset that there used to be video game vixens that looked a certain way, and they love it when characters get ripped apart and destroyed, maimed, wrecked, killed. But, oh, you shed a titty. Oh, I don't know about this. The vibes are off. I don't think they respect women very much. It's the same shit. It's the same shit over and over again. And we're so tired of this argument. Because this argument is not true. Now, of course, this is Dead Meat. This is the host of Dead Meat. And he's just in the meme because this is a viewpoint that comes from not necessarily him, but from people who act like him. Where they say, bro, I love bloods, guts, and horror. But I didn't like when it felt that it was exploitative when the woman died because she was wearing sexy clothing as she was getting cut in half by that piano wire. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous argument. Because NetherRealm Studios believes that by removing the skin of the females and by adding skin to the men that you're being equal. When in truth, quoting my friend Christina, you literally can do both. 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 You can have both. You can have both. You can have both. ¿Por qué no los dos? ¿Por qué no los dos? Mucho, 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 mucho. You can do both. But we have them choose not to. Because NetherRealm Studios, Ed Boon, the people who are running Mortal Kombat, believes that being politically expedient is more important than being financially lucrative and politically expedient. This would be egalitarianism, but it's not. It's hardcore women have it worse feminism. In-game development. On a loop. In a cycle. And it never goes away. They never addressed common topics. They never address issues. And that is boring. It is fucking boring. It is blue boring. It's so boring. Because we can have the argument. But the evidence demonstrates that you guys are hypocrites. So, make it make sense. If you don't like women like that, if you think that women can't have skin showing, then by all means, bro. Stay in the convent. Stay in the convent. Go become a nun. Go become Amish. Become a Muslim. A Wahhabi Muslim. Be militant. Stay the fuck away from me. I like titties too much. I like ass too much. I like dick too much. I like seeing it. I like fighting against it. And I like brutalizing it. Yeah, but this is not necessary. We can have both, guys. Because ironically, in the mind of a man who believes it's acceptable to lie, we gotta be in the cycle of the Goo Brigade. But you know, more on that in a bit. And of course, that brings us to this bullshit. David Gilbert. It has been 10 years since the misogynistic hate online campaign that has become known as Gamergate will now be used to glaze Kamala Harris because niggas don't like Kamala Harris. Then the hate comments came from fringe online platforms like 4chan. Today, that hatred comes directly from the GOP. Here's how it happened. Multi-segment thread. It's great that you guys chose to bring this up again. Let's talk about that shit. And how it's not true. How can we prove it's not true? Because it's easy to prove it's not true. This is the entire reason that Gamergate started right here. Journals deny it, said it was conspiracy theories, we were lied to. Nick trades in good press coverage and holds back criticism in exchange for paid documents, trips, gears, and job opportunities. He was making deals behind the scenes, and he threw in positive reviews to sweeten the deal. From The Other Frost. Let's go watch that video, chat. Those of you that know The Other Frost know that The Other Frost is actually originally a Gamergate, or excuse me, not Gamergate, but was a game player that was a part of Second Wind that he has now quit from. And he was also formerly a competitive player inside the scene of Smite, under that of Hi-Rez and Titanforge. I believe he seems to be in a relationship with Smitten, another Smite creator, and this is his video breaking this down. Let's watch that content.
Video is not meant for mass appeal. It is meant to inform the SWG community and the developers and games media members who supported us along the way. That would include the 18,000 or so Patreon members and the over 400,000 YouTube subs and anyone else who has ever associated with us as a group. I feel we owe a lot of our success to you, and you are entitled to know how things went down. As such, this video will assume you are somewhat in the know of who we are and who I am. If you don't, well, what a strange way to meet. I promise my production value is not this non-existent normally. The intended outline of this video will start with the prefacing 2 hang-ups people might have, one being, if Nick is so bad, then why did everyone resign with him? 2, is this some kind of alt-right grift? Then I'm going to go into my problems with Nick and SWG leading up to my resignation, followed by what I found out about Nick after my resignation. The original video ended up much longer and convoluted than I expected, so I trimmed this one down to maintain more of the focus on Nick's behavior and separate SWG from his actions. There are more details and problems that went on at SWG, and that can be in its own video. Apologies if you don't like sequels. There are 2 details above all others that create a little cognitive dissonance, making it hard to believe negative criticism of Nick Calandra. If Nick is so bad, then why did the others resign in solidarity? That's not how it went down. It just looked better for the news. How it went down is I warned everyone we were going to be fired because the executives were tired of Nick overpromising, overspending, and underdelivering, and were offering me his job. He had driven up costs by over 70% since the start of the year and lost somewhere around $30,000 to $60,000 per month on YouTube side alone, and getting worse. Only 3 people got to resign from the Escapist video team, myself and 2 others deemed profitable. Everyone else was fired. Yahtzee legally had to be the last to leave so we wouldn't trigger a solicitation clause or no poaching clause. He wasn't poaching, but we didn't want to take any chances with whatever might be in his 15-year-old contract. Speaking for myself, there were a few hang-ups, but I liked the rest of the team, and Nick gave me a chance to get into the space to begin with, so I figured I could give him one as well. But now I've found out that even what I knew to be true at the time wasn't the full story. The rest of the team and I didn't know that Gamers was planning on sacking Nick and giving the rest of us creative freedom at The Escapist. Nick threw a fit, said The Escapist would never be profitable. Yes, there would be layoffs because Nick went on a hiring spree and his Prima project failed spectacularly, but the rest of us would get to do what we wanted with the channel. Essentially, Nick threw us under the bus due to his failure to deliver on what he promised.
Oh man, game journalism continues to be dog shit. Who could have known? Ah, that is so unexpected and not predicted. Man, I can't believe that happened. Can you believe that happened, chat? I can't believe that happened. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. That's so crazy. Ha 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 ha. That's so crazy, bro. That's so crazy. That's so crazy.
The second detail from the perspective of a vocal minority is that this is some kind of alt-right grift attack against Nick. No, Nick has slighted many people with all kinds of ideologies and political views. I, unlike Nick, am not really the type to give unsavory people on Twitter the time and attention, and trying to frame it as me standing with them is a distraction from the fact that the intent of this is to point out that Nick Calandra specifically is the worst type of person that can end up in games media. He's been highly unethical, and the unfortunate effects of this is the validity of everything that's been published under his tenure will now come into question. I traced it as far back as August 2017 when Nick did not publicly disclose that one of the studios he was making a documentary for had offered a minimum $4,000 investment to get his fan-funded Kickstarter across the line. Since then, he's been trying to make bigger and bolder moves. They just don't pan out how you'd expect them to, I suppose. Claims to stand up for workers, developers, creatives, and consumers, essentially branding himself and the crew as the change the games industry desperately needs.
You probably expect me to end this video by saying something like, it's social media, so none of this really matters anyway. People are going to play the game regardless because the vast majority don't care how something is made and just want to have fun.
Oh, that's a lie. Just like you care about how the sausage you put into your mouth is made and you don't want to know that all that meat that's about to go into your gullet was something that was ran through 2077 mile nanoangstroms of garbage, sewer water, dead water, and infectious sewer sludge that can only be properly described as a petri dish for the minions of hell. You don't want to put that in your mouth. And you certainly don't want to consume that as a content creator or as a consumer. You don't want to be part and parcel to someone making you eat literal toxic love sausage. So why would that argument ever seemingly work in the position of game designers and game development? How is that a logical argument? It isn't. So why did you say it? That's crazy.
Well, alright, that's all true. But what's also true is that we at Second Wind and you, the person watching this right now, spend a lot of time thinking about online conversations like this, or otherwise you wouldn't be here. Maybe you'll end up having actual interesting discussions about things like AI, unions in the game industry, plagiarism, games media, oh, and my personal favorite, out-of-touch executives.
His actions, however, have been anything but noble. During my short time at the Escapist and at SWG, he attempted to steer content in a direction that validated his views and minimized criticism of his biases and underhandedly tried to micromanage every creative decision. He isolated, overworked, verbally attacked, and manipulated his coworkers. He blackballed developers that asked for game coverage one too many times for his liking, even though he set himself as the direct point of contact for the group, and was actively against the idea of us giving free shoutouts or small deals to smaller devs who couldn't afford it.
In other words, pulling up the ladder.
Then try to funnel them back his way to bargain for paid consultations. All the while,
packing his resume.
He misrepresented audience feedback to exert his vision on the channel and misled the team and community about the cost of running a business in order to appeal to their sympathy and draw out more money from them.
Lying and stealing.
And all of this is so he can finally fulfill his creative vision, and when pressed on why he is paid as much as he is, he responds, "I've gotten accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and I have a mortgage to pay."
Literal scum of the earth.
In 6 months, his business decisions, content strategy, and community management raised our costs, just our cost, from somewhere around $600,000 to a forecasted ballooning $1 million cost operation, and eroded our goodwill and income, which he leveraged to make more decisions. For clarification, I don't believe Nick intentionally tanked SWG's value. From what I could find and from my experience, Nick doesn't set out with the intent to fail, and is stubborn about using the same failed plan he's been using for the past 6 years. You can see on screen what is essentially Calandra's thumbprint across Gamumentary, The Escapist, Prima, and now Second
Yes, indeed, Bolster. Boogie's approach.
Wind. He's been made aware by others and myself that what he does doesn't work. It's the whole reason everyone was fired to begin with. He refuses to change his ways and actively sabotages anyone who tries to help him or notify the rest of the team. And while I do hold Nick 99% accountable for SWG's problems, the structure within SWG was unstable from the start and falling apart, and most of the times I butted heads was when I tried to slow things down to reevaluate our costs and stop the overspending instead of pushing more people to the Patreon and milking the community we already had to capitalize on the momentum. This is a team of talented creatives who just wanted to make things. They didn't have the desire to get as involved with Nick's power grabs, and of the leads that routinely took charge, none of them were qualified to make business decisions or content strategy. SWG didn't choose Nick to lead, it's just no one else wanted it. Even I didn't want a lead role. Myself and 3 others are qualified to help, but saying so made us seem argumentative, defensive.
In other words, nobody had the desire to lead, so the most power-seeking individual naturally led to the position. What used it as a way to then say, "Why do you care so much?" Man, aren't these arguments sounding really familiar? These arguments are really familiar, chat. I wonder why that is.
offensive and arrogant. The specific event that finally made me see there was no chance for change was when I asked one lead if they were afraid Yahtzee would leave if they kicked Nick out, and this lead said SWG would be fine without Yahtzee. The group would get to keep his salary, the money in the war chest, and that would buy them enough time to find their way again. This lead in particular encouraged an every man for themselves mindset from early on that led to strong arming within the group. This was essentially the same conversation I had with the executives of Gamers back at The Escapist that convinced me to leave then as well. I don't believe someone like that who can't perceive value is the kind of person that should be appointing themselves as HR, evaluating people's worth in the company, firing people, and then issuing statements about how the problems are just the usual growing pains. For my part, I believe this had to be public-facing because I exhausted every other avenue, and I believe Nick Calandra's standards of conduct and how he drives SWG go against everything we claim to stand for as a business. We're supposed to stand up for consumers, creatives, developers, workers, especially now when the industry looks so bleak. As far as I'm concerned, I believe Nick Calandra goes against the ideals he claims to uphold, misleads public perception, and actively profits from it. As part owner, employee at the time, and someone with a history of calling out these practices alongside Nick himself, I believe the right thing to do was to resign and inform the public. I did not leave because SWG refused to fire Nick. When I was asked if I'd leave if Nick stayed, I said I would continue to work in SWG to the best of my duties. The problems continued after that. I did not leave because the head of sales was fired. I barely knew them, as we had both been kept in isolation and Nick fed me lies blaming the head of sales for our problems. My resignation was written before they were fired on August 1st. Feel free to check whoever steps forward as the public representative for SWG, as details are kept vague. But now everything else I've found after my resignation that I'm about to get into is pointed solely at Nick Calandra. It takes away any claim Nick might have of being unaware and unable to control himself. It also recontextualizes our history and fills in the gaps for a lot of questions I had. After I resigned, his former coworkers and bosses reached out to me with allegations of experiencing the same behavior and worse throughout the past 6 years and multiple outlets he's worked at. I made sure to find as many sources as I could to back up each claim as well as do my duty.
Beep, boop, boop, bag that shit up. Actually, quick tip. Being mindful of Calandra potentially stalking your socials. He did that to me for close to a year anytime I said anything related to Game Press work, until I finally blocked him. Hopefully he doesn't do that to you too as well, but yeah, it was super weird. 3 anonymous sources warning me about cyberstalking.
Bosses reached out to me with allegations of experiencing the same behavior and worse throughout the past 6 years and multiple outlets he's worked at. I made sure to find as many sources.
2 sources were willing to go on record. 11 wished to remain anonymous or off the record, their evidence and circumstances being too specific and would be able to out them and identify them. Most of the evidence shown will come from the 2 and myself. Each person and piece of evidence is shown backed by at least 2 sources of independent information independent of each other. In some cases, evidence is missing because my access was revoked to them on the work Slack and online documents. If allowed, I can go back and get them. Receipts! But then, of course, if you're a person who's familiar with the work of the other Frost, you know that he was the exact same way when he documented what happened between him and DM Brandon Nance, when he was finally removed from the fucking gaming space of Smite after being outed as a serial fucking abuser. The man does his research, as do I.
Sources as I could to back up each claim as well as do my due diligence to try and refute it. I've verified the credibility of each piece of evidence and each individual, and I've also gone the lengths to vet some of the people Nick himself pointed me towards. He was once again lying and trying to delegitimize people and their claims. I will show what I can, but a lot of sources were given in confidence due to fear of retaliation from Nick or any consequences that may come from speaking out in the industry. Here's what I found on top of the stuff I personally experienced already. In a few words, Nick Calandra has a history of highly unethical behavior in games media and just in general, including everything else I've mentioned so far, plus taking equipment and product meant for press and publications under the guise of coverage and keeping it for personal use. Based on evidence found, Nick seems to have been using his own personal Steam account as the main Steam account for each of his publications he's worked at for over the past 10 years, allowing hundreds of press codes for games to be funneled directly into his personal Steam account rather than that of any individual publication. They follow him where he goes. Now back to the rest of the stuff. Offsetting his costs with income from other sources to mislead associates. Consistent overpromising, underspending, and underdelivering that put other people's jobs on the line when layoffs come through. Pushing for content that validated his own views and tastes while discouraging any content that took a stance against his own biases. Prioritizing his own raises and money for his projects while holding back the upwards mobility of his coworkers and also prioritizing his publicity to the detriment of others. Cyberstalking his peers in the field to the point of making them uncomfortable. Slandering, libeling, blackballing, and threatening to mobilize his audience against people in the games industry with the explicit intent to harm their careers. creating hostility in the work environment by lying, manipulating, gaslighting, and isolating people who disagree with him or are shown to be more capable than him, trading positive press, positive reviews, and documentary opportunities without disclosing that publishers were paying for his trips, paying for the documentaries, and Nick was bargaining for future employment. This isn't stuff that happened only 6 years ago. This was happening while we were at SWG and Escapist and every other outlet he worked at for the past 6 years. Now this part's going to sound personal, but it's relevant and sets up the next points. A lot of Nick's behavior comes from a sense of entitlement, feeling like he is owed stuff. But a lot of Nick's behavior also comes from resentment. He feels wronged by people in games media, and Nick holds grudges. The issue is that Nick also has a problem with perception. It creates this catch-22 where if Nick wrongs you and you stand up for yourself, then he feels he can retaliate. But if Nick wrongs you and you don't do anything, then he thinks you're holding it in and plotting your revenge, which angers him, so he feels he can strike first. And anything can set him off. Important example here. For as long as I've known Nick, he hated this one specific individual with a passion, and what drove him up the walls was the way this person pretended to not know Nick. I reached out to this guy, and lo and behold, he actually didn't know who Nick was. You can check Twitter if Nick leaves this up by the time this goes through and see that he has never acknowledged Nick once, but Nick has tweeted at him. I went and double checked with somebody else to make sure this guy really did know Nick, and he has given the exact same responses. He genuinely didn't know Nick. Nick's arch nemesis wasn't pretending to not know him, he didn't know he even existed, and Nick was holding a one-sided grudge this entire time. This set off some red flags, so I reached out to a few more people I knew Nick had problems with and found out that they also didn't know Nick, or knew of Nick, but didn't know Nick was beefing with them. They also tried to delegitimize the head of sales with a message that appeared to be from a disgruntled employee of his prior to joining SWG, but that did not check out. I had enough on Nick already to know he was well aware of his actions and now being insincere. When I told him I was going to continue investigating the claims that popped up and allow him the chance to explain himself, his demeanor completely changed back to the Nick I knew, accusing me of acting out of malice with the sole intent of running him out of games media. I do feel Nick was willing
Would be hard to if you wanted
to hear at the time to try and prevent me from going through with it. The moderator agreed that truth should come forward. Nick panicked and named people he believed had it in for him from his days at Gamumentary, saying they forced him into a meeting to assert ownership under false pretenses and that he offered them jobs when he sold the brand, and they turned him down.
If you run that, then I will do what I need to do.
Well, sure. See, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They pulled me into a meeting on false pretenses under the four of them, where they tried to basically assert their ownership on Gamumentary despite not having paid any of the taxes, despite not having paid any of the business expenses. There's some contract they sent you. I don't remember what I signed on that, but that whole thing ended ugly. But that was not, like, I did not screw them out of money in any form on that. I tried to get them full-time jobs. They didn't want it. Kyle, Bailey, Jake Therial.
That was a lie at the time, as I have the written document of the intervention that was held, as well as the audio recording of the meeting in which they gave Nick plenty of warning and asked him if he wanted to continue. Nick used to run a site called Only SP. It did okay, and then it didn't, so he sold it. He then tried again with Gamumentary. It was run on the hard work of volunteers, and at times staff members pitched in to cover costs. Needing funds, Nick launched a Kickstarter for $22,000. They made it, but only because Nick accepted a $4,000 investment from Outpost Games. Seems he has a history of cashing in on a community's goodwill, and also a history of unethically blending the lines between PR and journalism. He was trying to get into the PR business and has a journalism degree, so surely he knew the difference between PR and journalism and the ethics surrounding the two. Ever since then, Nick's been trading good press coverage and even reviews for favors, gifts, trips, and job opportunities.
Which all of us knew, but you know, some people like to pretend. I guess.
One such opportunity was when he sold Gamumentary to Enthusiast Gaming in exchange for documentaries and a salaried job opportunity for himself and no one else on the staff. The sale was propped up on his staff's hard work, and Nick used it to leverage a job for himself at Enthusiast Gaming. A group of 4 had a meeting with Nick to air out their grievances and work out their demands. They told him what the meeting was about, and he agreed to stay.
I will be asking him. I think I decided I'll read the thing with maybe a little bit of embellishment, probably not that much. And I'm not sure. Should I like ask after I finish that little paragraph? Like, is this okay? Like, are you willing to listen?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And then we can continue on down. And then once we get past the issues and stuff, before we get to the demands, I just want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, I agree.
If anything. Sorry if it seems like intervention-y. It doesn't. We don't mean for it to feel that way. We just wanted to basically have a meeting and talk about stuff. Are you down to listen?
The grievances were sale of site without consulting staff and no transparency on the details of the deal. No clarity of vision with site or YouTube channel. Extreme amount of micromanaging. Complete control of the shoots, but he didn't have the knowledge or experience to perform the task correctly. Lack of transparency overall and making major decisions without discussing fully with executives. Disregard for the roles. Decisions or agreements reached in an executive or staff meetings are often disregarded or ignored soon after. Lack of respect of site members. The demands he agreed to, legally binding contracts concerning documentary rights, full transparency of the budget, clarification of roles, streamlined creative workflow, better organization surrounding docs, PR support for all content, but Nick would not under any circumstances agree to communicating business decisions with the team. Even if it wouldn't change anything about the decision, he chose to keep the team in the dark. According to him, they had no financial stake in the company whatsoever, even though he repeatedly promised pay, and it was the work of the volunteers that boosted Gamumentary's value to make a sale in the first place. Each one resigned during that meeting, and in the end, he didn't tell them how much the site was purchased for.
Like, I'm completely aware. I'm not saying you don't have a stake in the site. You've worked on the documentaries and all that, and I totally plan to compensate you guys for that. But those are not... The financial dealings of the site are mine and mine alone.
The financial dealings of the site are mine and mine alone. Damn, that's crazy, dude. That's crazy. Why are they yours and yours alone? Why doesn't anybody else get to have a choice in that? Any logic to that? I don't think there is. Crazy. Crazy.
I think that's what we disagree with.
You can't. Like, literally my name is on the domain name. I pay the bills.
That's fine. We're not saying that necessarily.
I pay the taxes on the site.
It's that for
I handle
morale
all
to
the
improve
business
across the
operations of the
team, that cannot go forward. In order for us to feel like a team and not peasants in the kingdom, that process has to change.
The financial, that's not the business dealings of the site. The financials of the site are with me.
I think it's time for us to kind of come to a point in a way.
Nick believed that the team had no financial stake in Gamumentary. Nick had promised compensation. His staff had paid for some expensive. Their work is what built up the site, so it would be viable and valuable enough to sell it in the first place. In the end, they were asking for better communication and to know how much the site was actually sold for.
I'm going to speak for myself here. There were things that I was hoping to get out of this meeting in terms of changes, agreed upon changes that we kind of went through, etc. And Nick, the truth is I don't feel like there is enough change coming from you in terms of actually wanting to make the site better and own up to mistakes that have been made by you or by others or by all of us. And quite frankly, at this point, I'm out. I'm out of the website. I don't want to be part of this anymore if my effort and my work for more than a year, more than 30 plus pieces of content is not going to be appreciated. And that there's not going to be any changes going forward.
I ran OSP for 4 years, and people did a hell of a lot more work for me than you've done.
Okay, let's stop
and
insulting people.
Good, he said.
One last question, just kind of a shot in the dark here. How much is Enthusiast paying for Gamumentary and the site as a whole?
Not telling you that.
Why not?
Okay.
But after talking to Nick's former coworkers from various outlets, I continued to find threads and trends that led back to his Gamumentary days. Even the little things became big things. Example, Nick drew heavy criticism back when he made the Kingdom Come Deliverance documentary. The head of the company was a Gamergator and shared alt-right views. Nick approached this controversy purely from Warhorse Studios' angle without critically examining the director's stances, which some viewers thought was a bad call, causing Nick to argue with them. This felt inconsistent with Nick because I know he believes in asking the hard questions, having before ambushed people he was interviewing with uncomfortable questions the interviewee asked to be withheld beforehand. Nick trades good press coverage and holds back criticism in exchange for paid documentaries, trips, gear, and job opportunities, and a lot of his connections stem from his Gamumentary days. His staff at the time was not pleased when they found out. This recontextualized one of Nick's patterns of behavior. A lot of Nick's personal tastes and biases that he pushed on his staff for coverage or restricted them from criticizing led back to his PR connections. He was making deals behind the scenes without them knowing. I even found one where he threw in a positive review to sweeten the deal. All for flights, gifts, job favors, documentary opportunities, none disclosed. That made us look at his odd social media addiction in a different light. I also thought Nick flew off the handle, but something was off. Nick had already been made aware of his problem and vowed to be better back when he was tricked into publishing false evidence. He behaved himself, sort of, and was a bit more vague and defensive. Then he went on the attack almost out of nowhere until he embarrassed himself on a podcast, which I warned him about. He claims he stopped because he was threatened with termination, but that came after the fact that his apparent lady fair had sided with his arch nemesis, who once again pretended to not know that Nick existed. Keep in mind that Nick has a history of making relationships up and trying to be a knight in shining armor, so I wouldn't trust Nick's word that someone else motivated him. But now I know he had Twitter Blue during that time and was hiding it. If you don't know, Twitter Blue lets you get money from engagements. I remember that Nick found out how much money could be made from Twitter Blue on June 11. You can hide the blue check mark, but you can also tell someone has Twitter Blue because that's the only way to make posts that are longer than the 280 character limit. Nick was making money during his culture warring. All that outrage amounted to about 2 million engagements for a whopping $10. Twitter Blue cost $8 at base, so he tanked our reputation and made it harder to find sponsors for $2 Twitter dollars. Makes you wonder if it's less embarrassing to admit to having a social media problem that draws in sympathy. Not saying he was tanking SWG's value and planning to sell it, I'm just noting that Nick has sold only SP, Gamumentary, and in his mind he facilitated the sale of Escapist. What incentive does this man have to not run a business into the ground when he knows he can just sell it off after the fact? Nick went on to Escapist magazine and somehow ended up as editor-in-chief. Talking to workers that were there before my time, Nick isolated a few of the content creators and lorded over them with his heavy-handed content direction. Say you wanted to cover your favorite game, well, Nick wouldn't greenlight or promote it until you covered one of his favorite games first, or one of his undisclosed connections. I can't state the games because it might reveal the creators, but he was getting bolder with the unethical quid pro quo. More documentary opportunities as well as gaming gear were coming up for Calandra. But Nick couldn't keep the video side in the green, so he used money from the editorial side to offset the losses, a major red flag that led to the parent company splitting the video side away from the rest of the site. Nick was on his own now, not doing well, and then gamers bought up Escapist magazine. This was around the time I showed up. I didn't see many red flags with Nick at the time, but man did I have a bad time under gamers. He led me to believe it was his corporate bosses. He dangled a full-time contract over me for months and ignored his boss's attempts to promote me. He had me voice 60 videos for his Prima project where we assembly line Lords of the Fallen guides to no success. He had me voice his Stratos videos and shorts. He wanted me to come up with yet another series and another series. All of this on top of my other duties. I was in big-time crunch mode and Nick was practically begging me to get him through the year because his bosses set unreal expectations.
And as you can hear from Frost's voice, you can understand exactly why he would set him to do that. Despite being Latin, he sounds like a professional voice actor. He always has. It's just normal speaking cadence.
Turns out that was a lie. Nick was the one who promised them $805,000 in 2024 from YouTube video side alone while we were losing 30 to 60K quarterly. Nick was all over the place and received numerous complaints of creating a hostile work environment. He demanded the contracts be rewritten so that everyone answered to him, and it created this strange back and forth where Nick and his boss were fighting over me until the CEO pulled me into a meeting. I didn't know who to believe at the time. Nick said everything was their fault. Gamers said it was Nick's fault. They finally gave me access to the analytics though, and I was happy to see that Nick or whoever set up the YouTube backend wasn't very good at it. Once we optimized it a little, we could get more value per video and make the climb less daunting, but it did show me only Yahtzee and I were profitable. This is what led the executives to finally try and cut Nick clean off. He had run out of excuses for why he couldn't grow a video series and a channel. He took their money and it was time to pay it back, but he wanted to play victim instead. Their plan was for a Nicholas Escapist, one where the creators got to experiment and do what they wanted with the channel. He angrily declared the Escapist would never be profitable and that set his boss off. But we didn't know that. The team wasn't going to be fired until Nick threw a temper tantrum. He would rather an outlet go up in flames with him in it than have it succeed without him. And that's how we ended up leaving, unaware that Nick was the cause of all of our problems. Before we worked at SWG, though, I demanded to know whether he held me back from a promotion or if it was corporate. I wouldn't be mad, and I was fine with it if he used it to bargain for the full-time pay of the other staff members. He held firm that it wasn't him, and he'd go on to overspend, overpromise, overwork, underdeliver, and create a hostile workplace just as he had at Gamumentary and Escapist, while continuing to do back-alley deals with his PR connections where he traded positive coverage and dulled criticism in exchange for favors, job opportunities, and paid documentaries. That's as far as this one's gonna go because all the remaining details expand on my problem with Nick plus SWG leading up to my resignation, and I felt it watered down the core focus of Nick's actions. If there are any questions pertaining to Nick, feel free to ask them in the comments or on Twitter, as I plan to do a live stream in a few days where I can answer any frequently asked questions. If you have anything to ask about SWG, feel free to ask those as well so I can better structure that video. You may have noticed this video is monetized, so there could be claims by milking the drama for money. Those claims will come up no matter what I do. There's always a purity test, and the undeniable truth is that yes, speaking out against people like Nick has the side effect of bringing attention and money. I believe in the end it's about your main goal, how you get there, and what you do with the money that matters. I'd like to give back to the people that trusted SWG and me, and raise up developers, writers, games media, content creators, and to make something like that happen, I can't be shy about money. I also plan to stay independent regardless of the outcomes because I don't want to be in a position again where I can't speak out. What happens now? Personally, I do the same as I've done before. As for Nick's resignation, that vote with my wallet, my time, and my support. As for you, you've been informed. You can ask more questions to me, to SWG, and in the end, you are gonna have to make your own decision. This isn't me versus SWG, this is me against Nick Calandra's unethical behavior, and I'd ask him to separate from the team so that his actions don't continue to paint them in a bad light.
And thus, Nadeshot asks the world, bro, why do you guys care about these bad games? Why are you ranting on these bad games? Bro, don't you understand that you guys aren't giving these games a shot? Damn, I wonder why they must have those opinions. It must be, you know, Gamergate chud incels. That's the only answer that could be possible. Like, bro, that's the only one that matters. What do you mean, Gar? What do you mean? What do you mean? It's ridiculous, but this is old news to me, but for some of you, it might even be new news. Is it shocking? No, but this is literally what we meant when we said gaming journalism ethics. Where's the ethics in destroying a business because your ego is too big to allow you to have the ability to do anything whatsoever? Why should it be that people in a company need to go down with the ship because the man who fucking rigged the shit wanted to destroy the shit and directly caused everybody else to lose their shit, to flip their shit and have an inability to handle their shit? Why is this what is happening? Why is that what occurred? It's because guilt. Because money. Because greed. Because corporate greed. Corporate greed that only gets exposed when it's too late to handle it, or when people no longer have faith in the project. Is it shocking? No. But it is what it is. It is what it fucking is, bro. Shouldn't be like that, but you know. But you know. Nice gold. You thought he was black. No, he's Latin. He's always been Latin. He has always been Latin. He has always been Latin. When changing weapons, auto reloads stored weapon. Auto reloads stored weapon. 15-second cooldown. Okay. I guess I see that to the launcher and it does its thing. Anyways. There, right there. Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, right, yeah. That's how you can get from video game vixens to, bro, this is why Gamergate is a thing, to the actual problem of Gamergate. It is always going to be the continued problem that all people expect, which is people coping and seething about shit that isn't actually happening and isn't actually fucking true. However, this now brings us to Paul Tassi, talking about my game. The first Descendant Summer Viesa is the final shape for sexy costume crowd. There is nothing left, just nudity, just a naked chick walking around with guns. Mission accomplished. I'm going to show you what it is he's molding about. Let's see if I can pull it up on the Battle Pass. Or on the Descendant. If you look here on the Descendants list, you can find Ultimate Viesa, and Viesa. As you might notice, between both the Ultimate skin, it's basically the same character but with a different base skin already affixed to them. Between the base skin and the normal Descendant, they are the same thing. And, if it allows me to, if you look at costuming, you can then look at the things you're going to put on them, of which the thing he's molding about is the body skin. Namely, summer vacation themed Viesa. As you can look here from the swimsuit and then compare to the actual back frame, he is trying to show you the same outfit from the back and is saying, look, naked woman. Chat, serious question. Chat, serious question. Let's ask some serious questions, chat. I'll go over it again. I will go over it again from the start. Because in order for you to understand how retarded this is, you need to understand the levels that you have to get to. Paul Tassi is upset that the character that he's showing off his skin for is a character that looks like she's just wearing bare skin. She's just naked butt. She's just naked. She's just a naked chick. Despite the fact that it's a summer pool skin. A summer's pool skin that he chose to show from the back and not the front. It comes with a hair. And it comes with a body. Fellas, is a naked woman a swimsuit? Is a naked woman a swimsuit? I don't think a naked woman is a swimsuit. I think a naked woman is a naked woman. And it's a Korean game. I don't know if he knows this, chat. I don't know if he knows this. I don't know if he knows this. But I know this. That is how it works. I noticed, Paul Tassi, that you were zoomed in on the character, and the character's basic stats are consistent with a level 1 character. And you're standing in a snow area, which, considering the areas of the map that exist, if we actually go here and look at what I have unlocked on the map, and what would easily be identifiable on the map, other people who play the game, holler and let me hear you if you know it. You are somewhere around here, 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 or here in the game. Have to be, if there's snow. Do you mind showing us your social account, your character levels, and your mastery rank, please? Thank you. Because I think you went on the internet and tried to lie about a skin because you hated Grums. And basically exposed that you don't actually play the game. Why is this important? Well, chat, the problem with his argument, for those who are unaware, is that this is how Korean Western designs have always been in games that are called dress-up fighters or dress-up players. It is literally a feature, because these games monetize the sales of the cash shops. And if they're not selling power, they're selling fashion design. There's a word for this in every game. It's usually the word of the game and then scape. Like fashion, or actually no, fashion scape, or some variation of the title. For RuneScape, it's fashion scape. For beat 'em ups, it's dress up fighters. This has been like this since the start. Since the start, we've been out here in the streets. It's always been like this. Here's my character from when I was still an active player of Phantasy Star Online 2. I made a motherfucker look like Jeremiah. I made him look like Orange from Code Geass on purpose with teal hair and the season 6 design. Cause yes, I love Lotus designs. Yes, I love looking like a demonic flower while I wield a katana. It makes me feel like I'm playing Albert in Legends of Dragoon. And of course, this is also the case in 2D games. Here are some skins that come from DFO, Dungeon Fighter Online, which is the source material for Dungeon and Fighter, DNF Duel, that many people have gone crazy about and have since quit. We do it for the men, and we do it for the women. So, I know, deadass, you did not just get up here and cope to the live open internet because you are fucking scoping and seething about a video game because you hate grums like that. Bro, I know that's not what you just did. I know you did not just cope like that. That's crazy, nigga. That's crazy. Stay mad, though. That's crazy, though. That's crazy, though. Imagine lying like that. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. scoop when my research is done. But honestly, we could talk about that for a second if people have opinions. Because that is crazy, bro. That's crazy. What do you want people to do when they make video games like this? Do you expect them to just make games and not make sense? Because apparently that's what Paul Tassi wants. For reasons that have no degrees in design that stand to inherent logic. But you know, that's me. Someone who's supposedly stupid and doesn't understand things. But it is what it is. Moving on to new news. Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, referring to Sky News. The numbers of attacks on women have more than doubled since 2021. The numbers weren't low to begin with. Sadia Cowdery speaks on the safety of women on trains, and figures show that violent crimes against them on the railways have risen ... From Skyfile 1. Locked replies.
New figures show violent crimes against women and girls on trains have jumped by more than 50% in 2 years. Let's bring in Sadia Chowdhury, who's in the newsroom for us this morning with this story. Sadia, break down what sounds like some shocking statistics.
Yeah, it's really grim reading this morning, looking at these figures which come from British Transport Police. They're looking at their data over a number of years, and they've compiled that into the 2024 report. And actually, some of those statistics are quite concerning. So as you say, the numbers of attacks on women that have more than doubled since 2021. And by the way, some of these numbers weren't very low to begin with. So in 2021, the number of sexual harassment reports was 7,561. That's now jumped to 11,357. Sexual offences jumped by 20%. Sexual harassment, as I say, reports doubled. That's catcalling, touching, pressing, upskirting, indecent exposure, all on the rise. Women facing so much of that on trains, on British railways. And crime data, separate crime data, suggests that most of these assaults occur during the evening rush hour and at times when trains are the most busiest and packed. And if you think that's an indication that perhaps people are reporting these offences more, I'm not too sure about that, because the British Transport Police data suggests that only 1 in 5 people who have witnessed somebody else on a train being a victim of sexual harassment have reported it to the police, and just over half of women say that somebody else who watched intervened. So there is all of that, I think, for a lot of witnesses and people who are on trains, users of trains who see such things, are also worried about the attack, being attacked themselves, and the risk that might bring on themselves. The British Transport Police, who collected this data, say that it is an indication that people are reporting this more. They've listed their app, and they have a text service which people can access when on trains. So if something is happening right before you, you can access those services, and they're calling for the community to watch out for each other, to stand up for one another when it is safe to do so, and to report these offences.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, what was it that Sargon said in addressment of this, chat? It's almost like bringing in hordes of foreign men wasn't a good idea. Truth. An immigrant, tier policing. An immigrant who raped a 13-year-old girl in the UK was allowed to walk free because he didn't know rape was illegal. But posting your opinion on social media leads to years in prison. Make it make sense. Muslim abuser from the Daily Mail who didn't know that sex with a girl of 13 years old was illegal is spared jail, by Paul Bettany of the Daily Mail, published January 13th. Updated on in 2006 of February. And then, of course, if I just scroll down the timeline, I'm pretty sure Carl's got more to say. Let's see here. Does he have the one about the tier caste system? It appears that he probably doesn't. He does shitpost about the situation that involves Taylor Swift, which, if nobody knows anything about that, Muslim extremism got a Taylor Swift concert canceled. I do believe I covered this on air the other week, but it doesn't appear to be here. But basically, all the shit that's happening in the UK with the two-tier caste system of people being castigated for crimes that are not fair to hold against them is currently coming to its climactic end, the way that most people would have expected it to happen. Not shocking, not surprising, but it's the shit that happens when you allow for a two-caste system, where you criminalize the people who are citizens in the country, and you treat the people who are criminalizing that country as upper-tier citizens that are first class, where everybody else who lived in that country, was born in that country, and is dying in that country, are second class citizens. Nothing shocking. But, for a palate cleanser, let's look at what happens when a little person pulls the ladder politically up behind himself in Hollywood and makes it so that instead of 7 actors getting to have a job, you get this. Oh, the media can't be played because it's pulled. See if I can find links. 1 second. No, it's been claimed. Oh no. Oh no. Yes, it's all been disabled in response to reports by the copyright owner. Snow White leaks. Yep, the leaks are public. Here we go. Here we go, chat.
Now you wash the dishes. You tidy up the room. You clean those cobwebs. And he'll use the broom. Me?
What's up, all me Yorkshire?
So, instead of the original take, she's making them clean their own house. Bro, I don't know what the fuck to say. What? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That's after reshoots, bro. Oh, my God. And they look so fucking bad. They look so fucking bad. Look at that CGI nightmare. How is this better than having 7 live actors? Holy fuck. Was it worth it? I don't think it was worth it. But you know, what do I know?
For people that have comments that are self and the full con works, they're in the entire. So look, even in the beginning of the song, she's bossing them around.
She's bossing them around, bro. Go. What would I prefer? Diverse dwarves or CGI slop? Diversity. I'd rather a live actor get paid for a live performance than a CGI monstrosity. Because what happens every single time that we pivot to CGI monstrosities like this is that people point at the CGI and say the CGI is the reason the movie's bad. The movie's bad for a lot more than the CGI, and the CGI is only one part of it. But you know, Peter Dinklage knew what he was doing. You know, it was... What else should he have done? You know, chat? Gotta get the bag at the expense of everybody else. It seems to be the theme of today's news. Get the bag at charge of everybody else. Refreshing. Refreshing. However, before I close out the news, I have a segment. And this segment is from my homie, Crab Crawler. If you have not been looking at what I've been saying and what I've been showing on Twitter, this is a mutual of my channel. This, proper name, being Nick Monroe, is an investigative journalist that has been hounded and harassed by the news media for years on the timeline. I'm gonna start over again, this way it can get put out directly. My mutual, Nick Monroe, for years, between Twitter, Minds, probably also Rumble, maybe also BitChute, maybe also Odyssey, and multiple other platforms, has been using multiple accounts because he has been unfairly hounded by the original's trust and safety team under Dak Dorsey and a Grégoire Pagduel, or Wall Pagduel, whatever the fuck his name is, to justify them removing his ability to get things stuff and actions done on the behalf of the media empire. Motherfucker just started on top of me. Of the media empire that he was responsible for building and making. And it is in this empire that it is seen and sought that something could be done on behalf of him and the world, that things be communicated because it needs to be seen and it needs to be heard. Because people need to have the ability for seeing and having the problem addressed in a timely fashion and manner. He has been tirelessly citing alongside people like myself, or occasionally, even more commonly, names that you are probably more familiar with, like that of Sophia Norwitz, to bring you the news, despite the amounts of people that would try to fight for you not to see the news in its whole totality. Despite trying, he has been fucked over time and time again. So I will lay out to you what he said in his own words thusly. Note, even after publishing, I might find additional details worth adding, so please check back from time to time to see if I've updated this. Call to action. Posted on August 14th, 2024. Reply to this Ella Irwin tweet or these tweets from ALX and say that I have deserved to come back to the platform. Public advocacy makes all the difference with how much X is elected to decide matters of reinstatement. Consider this Substack post a message in a bottle that I hope reaches you. I'm heartbroken that I still have to deal with Crabcrawler1 and Nickmon1112 being banned on Twitter. Every day is lost time. Every day. On top of that, we're in a case where Elon Musk claims to be open for free speech. I certainly want some of that. I got some. My original account, Mr. Random, renamed the first player Carl, was an account that was unfairly being hounded by fucking losers that couldn't handle the fact that I was right and they were wrong, and I proved them right to their fucking face. Harassment mobs are not new, and people who are being taken down because of harassment mobs and news deserve to have the right to be able to come back. And not only come back, but be able to have multiple accounts, especially if they work in news journalism. Regardless of how much you dislike them, your platform shouldn't be taken away because somebody doesn't like what you have to say. And so they use their power from social media watchdog groups like Sleeping Giants to bully you into silence. Let alone Kufus. If you saw my appearances both in ABC and BBC documentaries dedicated to Andrew Tate, thank you. It took a lot of work to make that into reality. Unfortunately, X refuses to recognize my journalistic efforts as they continue to keep Nickmon1112 and Crabcrawler banned on the platform. Here are my segments in both documentaries that I was in. His ABC Tate Doc and his BBC Tate Doc. I want to come back onto X and follow interesting stories. I get great tip-offs all the time from my community, and that's what I miss doing. Short ADHD version. Tate fans initially got me banned in March of 2023, and then was reinstated. But during that time, he freaked out and made drunken empty threats versus former Tucker Carlson producer Greg Ray. After I was reinstated in April 2023, Greg complained to then Trust and Safety League Ella Irwin about what happened, and then Ella rebanned me. Later, Ella Irwin quit, leaving me in indefinite limbo. I reached out to Greg and apologized last year. We made amends. I will once again publicly apologize to him. I deserve to be punished for what I said. My argument is that how X's indefinite punishment system has gone on for too far long. It is the only thing that is keeping me banned. Even Greg is finally coming back, but the platform is dragging their feet. This is evident through the public lobbying done by ex-advocate ALX, first in May and then again in July. My first thought is, thank fuck, I'm getting acknowledged. I spent several weeks and months waiting for ALX to come through. Several other names listed by him were reinstated, but like being picked last for kickball, I have yet to see Nickmon1112 be restored. It was painful getting my hopes up. I even got to see some of my old friend profiles when people tried typing it out. In my opinion, it is the indication of relevancy that is enough for X's system to fetch my old profile. It made me hopeful that X was restoring my account's data before formally restoring to the platform. I've had multiple people reach out to ALX regarding this effort to try and get me reinstated. The consensus is that he was working on it, and the process was harder than it looks. If we work off the notion that I'd only be reinstated when people wanted me back, I'd meet that standard. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 examples of people asking for me to be brought back to X. Here's example number 1. Example number 1, Tom Pappert. Example number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Tom Papper, Gunpowder and Vanilla, Autumn Fox, Capstan Amusing, Sam CK, Noble Jarl, Milk Bar TV, Chief Minister of Truth, King Porn Poop, Major Bloodknock, The Gator Gamer, Kita Eldermark, friend of the channel, Master of the TS should probably be in here as well, Orville Red Pillar, Undoomed TV, Morbius, Sizable Shared, Caleb Pride, friend of the channel, Lunar Activist, friend of the channel, Critterman, friend of the channel, Director Arcater, friend of the channel, as well as myself. I thought the best course of action was speeding things along and holding myself accountable. This led me to sit down and do an interview with a friend of mine. Why Crabcrawler was banned, I want it back. Speaking to Lucy Brown of Lucy and Meriden Brown. I want to get this out of the way. Through this write-up, I will be tempted to compare my plight to other online figures that caught in their own controversy. So humor me this one time as I thank God Almighty that I didn't end up like Boogie2988, who at the time of writing seemed to be picking up trash along the highway as a form of online pittance after lying about having cancer. Amen!
So Nick,
This is 44 minutes long. I will not play this here, but I please encourage you to go look at this and read this, as I will be posting this inside of the Discord. And if you're not already part of the Discord, I will also be retweeting it alongside this post when I post this directly to Twitter. It took this long to be able to publicly talk about it because I was too embarrassed. Simple as that. A bunch of crap was going on in 2023. I had to prioritize finishing my work on the ABC-BBC Tate project before I could even think of addressing why Crabcrawler can get suspended. When the Tate stuff was kicking off in early 2023, my cousin suddenly died in his own hands. It devastated me and my family, and as that happened, I had taken on too much of a task trying to address the issue of Andrew Tate's war room chat logs. Alongside me coping with this huge personal loss, I leaned too much into the booze. I remember what I was doing the moment I got banned, before it got hazy from my IPAs. I was watching the Friday Night Tights episode with Gavin McGinnis while playing Hogwarts Legacy. There's some weird irony in how Gavin finds himself in the same indefinite hell as me when it comes to Twitter, but I won't waste my time speculating on that. It's not speculation, we know why Gavin McGinnis gets banned, but it's what it is. I occasionally tat out and look at Twitter and X, and I couldn't notice I couldn't anymore. Not sure what's going on here, but there's no reason why Crabcrawler should be suspended when I've seen Ella Gerwin. Some transparency on why he would be banned was good. Ironically enough, who else is it? Ian Miles fucking Chong, the grifter of the century. And then, of course, Ella Irwin was my mates. Account was suspended after fairly extensive investigation. We cannot comment on it in any detail for legal and criminal cases, but the account has violated multiple privacy rules repeatedly and across multiple platforms. This statement from Ella Irwin misled people into thinking I was involved in some kind of criminal wrongdoing. It was irresponsible for her to make this claim in the position that she held. At the time on March 10th, I wasn't facing legal or criminal charges at any time. Ella's assertion to this, on the contrary, is completely false, and I know exactly that it was for that purpose, because this is the exact thing that left-wing media does. They espouse and cast aspersions on other people by saying they're an evil person and there's a reason why they were being banned, rather than saying, I didn't like them and I'm happy that they got banned because I encouraged it from the back log rooms. It was enough for Greg to call me a ban-evading psychopath. I assumed the worst out of it. I previously got to know Greg during my time at the Post-Millennial. We had enough of a background that I had no problem with calling out Tucker's admiration for the Tate brothers with him. But eventually it soured and he blocked me, late in 2022. Fast forward to early 2023. Staffinos. Fast forward to early 2023, and it became evident that Greg, at the very least, assumed the worst of my initial ban of X, believing I was some kind of criminal because of the smear campaign launched by allies of the Tate brothers. That led me to what I said to Greg after I was banned. I was wrongly thought he was amongst the pro-Tate mob trying to get me deplatformed. I was led to believe that he was a part of the crowd trying to attack me and my family. It caused me to lash out. I hate looking back at it. There it is. I also tried calling him once that night. My bad. I posted Greg's phone number, he posted mine. That don't matter in the end, though. I'm not proud of it. Even now I have a hard time adding the above images because of the shame. I'm sharing them because now they're the actual things that got me into this mess. I have to face and address it. On March 11th, a lot of people saw what I said to Greg and were disappointed in me, which is completely understandable. A few close friends tried to call, but I didn't pick up. As soon as I woke up, I realized what I had written in my drunken stupor. I deleted it immediately, and I hadn't mean what I had written. But even then, I thought it was over. I thought this was soon the final nail in the coffin, immediately known to the people of X, and there'd be no hope in me getting my account back. I even made mention of what I said to Greg in my appeal submissions to Twitter during this time frame. It was impossible for me to articulate the emotional turmoil I had been going through as it was happening. I hadn't processed the mental burden for myself when it came to the extent of the Tate brothers' story. To those people, I'm completely sorry. Many counted on me in the past and didn't expect to see things in such a wreck. Andrew Tate was reinstated at X, even though he had been publicly threatened and targeted the family of Colty Bra. The Tate brothers bandivated much worse than I ever could have. But Elon was fine reinstating these two after he took over. Andrew Tate's war room people even had guys show up in some random bloke's house because that guy made comments about a war room member's girlfriend. March 29th. On the 29th, reinstated me under the new criteria. Here was the email. It seemed to be like a miracle. There was somebody at the company who truly had enough faith to bring me back. I addressed the issue again with Greg. Even then, I knew I said it was wrong. A follower brought it up to me, and I told him the truth. What had happened here was a mistake that I apologized for. This person extended my continuing, but apparently, oopsie whoopsie, somebody X made a mistake in bringing me back. Emmy rocks. This is one of the many people who are woke souls on the internet. Unfortunately, I just found out Crab Crawler is suspended again. I don't understand how this is even possible to be banned again in less than a day after he got his account back. What rules did he break in such a small period of time? No new rule breaking. Reinstated an error, and we caught the error very quickly, but this is what's causing the confusion here. I don't like the fact that my entire livelihood for years built up was classified as either an error or not. That's incredibly demeaning to how much work went into Crab Crawler 1. For Error Owen to label my reinstatement as a mistake would imply that the trust and safety team of X had full knowledge of my circumstances, including the Greg thing, even though I had later deny having known about it at all. Imagine being initially banned, reinstated, and then rebanned as I was. I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone. I describe it as an emotional whiplash for a reason. I had cultivated a community over 30k followers, and ex-staff were playing some kind of game of hot potato and deciding whether or not to give it back to me. After being rebanned, I was only given generic violations of the TOS and for a few weeks anyways, and it so happened to be that X reinstated me again in mid-April, April 13th. So, on April 13th, 2023, I was once more reinstated. If you read the contents of the email, they reference the hate can be tracked back to the Tate fans flagging out old tweets of mine, while the references to posting private information can be traced back to a debate I had with Tate's ally, Sarnal Tall Shooter. He claimed during a Twitter space that he had known a financial incentive in regards to protecting the Tate brothers. I later provided otherwise via the shared business addresses that Tutorial Shooter and the Tate brothers had. This is what binged me for private information assertions. A investigative journalist exposes somebody for lying in a Twitter space, live on air, live during broadcast, and they use that as examples of how to assuage them as guilty of an action. Is like a victim using the examples of them being victimized to demonstrate how people are gang stalking them and harassing them in general on Twitter, let alone the other platforms it can happen on, and actively banning that person despite them being the victim of the situation. It has happened to plenty of people before, and it is things that we've noticed people have been seen for if you yourself haven't been hit for it. And that's crazy. Feel free to read all the tweets I made during this time frame. Notice how I didn't do anything ridiculous. I publicly vowed to do better going forward, but I wouldn't be given that chance. Greg decided to reply to a completely unrelated tweet. He felt it was wrong for X to reinstate me after things I had said on Telegram. Ella responded by saying, "Please DM me anything that directly connects the messages to your screenshot to the user. We don't have that information on our end and can't take base action on a photo of text. The user was not suspended for violent threats originally. That would be a permanent suspension." Greg deleted his claims letter, but here's a saved copy. The FBI frowns on people who make declarative statements in advance. This is the point of the story where I could have lied and denied everything Greg was saying. I could have bullshitted to save my own ass, but I'm a moron and I told Aaron the truth. I was in a dark place and I said things to Gregory that I shouldn't have. She didn't care. I saw these and appreciate the user taking public responsibility for his actions, including admitting to his work that may have put him in a dark place. We still cannot allow violent threats, and given the information I received today, the user has definitely crossed the line. My mistake in thinking X wanted honesty. They don't. At least not for me. And then, of course, pictures and things from the federal U.S. Department of blanked out for Cleveland Division of Nick Monroe's face. This is the man! This is the crab! This is the monster that they have denied truth and meaning. And also, my nigga, my nigga, my nigga, who taught me how to do this fucking job. Greg made good on his promise of calling the FBI on me. It was a real Mulder and Scully pairing they greeted me. They sat me down in the car to talk. I literally told them anything to the best of my ability. They may have done the research on me online beforehand. There was nothing for me to hide. They're the FBI after all. What's the point? Fortunately, the FBI were completely understanding my situation about the Greg situation. I explained the Tate brothers had a vicious army of underage fans attacking me, known as attack hornets or attack nests. When I played them audio from... I occasionally have to stop reading for a second to fucking do a kickflip so I don't get removed from inactivity. When I played them the audio from one of the War Room member meetups, they naturally likened Iggy Semmelweis to having the tone of a cult leader. I even asked the feds if they could put in a word good to X to get my account back. Sadly, they're not allowed to do that sort of thing. Which is the people who falsely believe in some criminal, they're mistaken. I had the FBI in my house. They knew all on my activity and saw through those baseless claims. They were made by Tate's people as an attempt to smear me. By late May 2023, I lost my ability to appeal on X. Even though there's no way whatsoever that people who knew the email address associated with Crabcore 1, I began to receive emails from X asserting that I submitted new appeal clips, even though I did not. I replied to several of these emails saying that I did not submit these requests to the extent to a few dozen over a week or two where the situation resolved itself and amounted by shutting off my ability to appeal for Crabcore 1's reinstatement entirely. I have no clue how it happened. It fuels my concerns that there were shady actions on X's part meant to keep me from coming back to the platform. I have never seen a situation like this where everything with this appeal system goes on the fritz. I don't even have the opportunity for Twitter X to tell me no. And of course, the DMs between Greg and Nick. I considered the glitch on Twitter and X's appeal system good enough reason to reach out to Greg and make amends with him. We had a good 20-minute phone call. We would both explain our sides and came to an understanding. He had gotten worried about the things that I had based on what he recently said, and it was on me to address it and clear the air. It's outrageous that I'm in purgatory where Greg Reed, the guy I wronged in the first place, is willing to forgive me and have me back on. That X isn't. There's one big reason for that. Onwards. At the beginning of June 2023, Ella Irwin stepped down as X's trustee and safety lead. She had gotten in hot water for making the call to limit the visibility of Matt Walsh's What is a Woman documentary after trying to post the full thing to X for some kind of bit of promo feed. Ella Irwin was the one who oversaw my ban, but then she stepped down, so I'm left with the conclusion that the remaining trust and safety staff are simply following Ella's instructions even though she's gone. That's the indefinite loop that I've been put into. I even had someone recently reach out to X to get the 10-4 on why Crabcaller was still banned, as in early 2024, they said I was guilty of violent speech. Let me reiterate on the chain of communications I had broken down. I cannot submit appeals for either Nickmon 1112 or Crabcrawler anymore. Twitter X shut off my ability to do that. It's one of the reasons I've had to go public with my case. Back in July, Elon Musk claimed that things a guy said by Lucas Gage amounted to a 6-month suspension. Repeated and clear calls for violence. Even if we applied what I said to Greg under that standard, despite the FBI clearing me, I should have been allowed back a long time ago. We are currently on the 16th month of Crabcaller being banned. Many people aren't mentally cognizant these days. I've been out there, outside, it's a madhouse. Oftentimes at work, I have to help old people work the credit machine, but it's just not the old folks too. There are younger people that aren't senior citizens that should know better, but they've seemingly given up hope and or resigned themselves to a lifestyle of inadequacy. For one reason or another, they've given up. Every time I read statements from Elon Musk about free speech, it feels like taking crazy pills. Here's seven statements made by the ex-CEO that are ironic given my continued banning. February 18th. Free speech is the bedrock of democracy. It is a fundamental defense against autocracy and statism, which is why we must fight so hard to preserve it. The founders showed great wisdom based on painful historical lessons in passing the First Amendment. May 15th. We have pushed harder for free speech than any other internet company, including Wikipedia, Shitty Wales. January 11th, 2024 this year. As promised, this platform will fight for your freedom to speak. We expect many such battles in the future. Freedom of speech is the bedrock of democracy. Without it, America ends. February 26th. Free speech is the bedrock of democracy. That's why it's the First Amendment. Without free speech, all is lost. March 21. This platform was previously extremely biased, amplifying the left and suppressing the right. Now they're both free speech. No voice on the left has been suppressed to the best of my knowledge. April 18th. Given the stats on the free speech, I'm going to fund a national signature campaign in support of the First Amendment. August 10th. Freedom of speech is the bedrock of democracy. If the truth is suppressed, it is impossible to make informed voting decisions. The degree in which freedom of speech is undermined around the world is extremely alarming. Indeed, Elon said to ex-staffer who promised all voices are welcome on the platform. Every voice but mine. Tommy Robinson has fled the UK, but he's still allowed on X. I lean on the side of free speech, yet if the supposed line is to stop at so-called criminal activity, you'd think Tommy would have met that standard by now. The UK wants its head on a plate. All I ask from X is the same leniency that they've shown to Miley Yiannopoulos, who was banned many years ago. All I want is the same compassion that the platform has shown people like Nick Fuentes. Despite the obvious reality of how polarized this portion of the alt-right, I said alt-right, right wing is in current discourse. Tommy, Mivlo, and Fuentes all came back, and they're all doing fine. The world didn't end because they have their accounts backed. The same should go for me. I don't even think the tapes deserve to be deplatformed on X. Despite everything that has happened with the story, I agree to the need for free speech, and when instances of illegality come up, they should be individually addressed per the situation without fully silencing voices. Elon Musk didn't even want to bring Alex Jones back to the platform, and he eventually caved after enough people demanded his reinstatement. It set a new norm of what was expected and previously before banned personalities being allowed to come back. I am not a criminal. I am not a criminal. To this day, I can say with confidence that the only thing on my track record is a speeding ticket. Even then, I went from 48 miles per hour to a 25 zone, so it's not like I was street racing. Despite the public pushback that I've received from X thus far, I'm still an enthusiast of the platform. There's no other way to easily and directly communicate with the others online without unnecessary obstacles and said hoops. You know, outside of the fact that your DMs are limited by Twitter Blue. There's that. But I'd say having access to people on Twitter to send them a message so they can talk to you on Discord, but Twitter and X's appeal is that they figured out how to circumvent from the get-go. The appeal of X being able to tell anyone in the world what you want at any given time, but I can't. Even in this crucial election year for America, where there's an endless stream of stories coming out from the campaign trail. Nick Mon 1112 has been banned for over 5 years, longer than it ever existed for 3.5 years. There's no excuse for that. If there was a known justification for why the former staff of Twitter banned that account in May 2019, I would present that to you now. All I remember at the time is how I was talking to a study done by Elon Lehan that had linked Antifa figures to left-wing journalists. To the best of my knowledge, something that could have been spun up about that. Back then, Twitter's former management was so highly biased towards left-wing academia that was chasing the so-called right-wing extremism. All I want is my community back. All I want is to be able to be myself on the platform again. All I want to do is dig into stories and have fun hanging out with my fans from around the world. NickMon1112 had 47,900 followers, while Crabcrawler had 35K. I have legitimate communities that were a part of the discourse. When it came to current events, even including mass shootings, I presented things as they became known. Every so often, previously said posts became debunked, but I obviously saw the need to bring cohesion to stories as soon as possible. People loved and appreciated it. Before my wings were clipped in my prime, I was on a local news station talking about the Jussie Smollett story. My Twitter thread on the New Zealand shooting in early 2019 was broadcasted because I was one of the people who had all the facts. In closing, I am oftentimes too tired from my day job at a liquor store to have time to try and do anything with this online stuff. I'm working on fixing that as best as I can. To the people who subscribed here to hear me talk about the case with the Tate brothers, I agreed to try and make it part 4 of my series that goes over the litigations and your interest in that particular in the last year. I've made this post because there are people out there, still out there, who believe in the causes I stood for and believe that I should come back to X. I won't let them down. That's my nigga. That's his story. And his story has been going unseen and unheard for decades, close to now. We're getting to the point that he'll have had accounts that had been banned for fucking 10 years before he's gotten fucking help with those accounts, if not already. Why is Nick Monroe still banned? Unban him. Spread the news story out. Link the post. Update. Algorithmically promoted things. Please get his story told. Get this Substack out. Make videos on the Substack. All the links can be found here inside the tweet thread. Get it going. Get it done. Please. And that, boys and girls, is the news. That's everything. That's what I have for you. Because it's the 15th, and because I've ran out of news, I'm probably going now chill playing my video game and vegging out on my server. I will go back live again in the next few minutes with Carl After Dark, but we will have content at 6 to 10. Again, it's movie night tonight. The server picked Space Jam, the original Space Jam, and I have something that's going to make people coke and receive when we get to watching Carl's choice. And then after that, there is a free game on Steam from the Jackbox pack. It's called Drawful 2. It is free until the 28th. Links for it have already been dropped inside of gaming under the Printing Press Express. I will copy paste those messages down into the lower levels of CCM1 for the people who are new. And please get that game. It is a free game. It is literally free. All you gotta do is click add to my account and you'll get it on your Steam account. And we will probably be trying that out in the same time frames in which we have versus chats. Because if there are days that I do not have topics planned for versus chats, it means we will have gaming planned for versus chats, and we will probably be making use of Drawful and other games as well. Doing it in that time period. So, that is what I have for you. I have been Carl. This has been my channel. I will see you all again. Goodbye, chat. Goodbye. 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 And remember, become a Carlist. Join the streams. Become a supporter. Give your sand to the movement. Build the sands of the hourglass where we take score and we keep time. And remember, as a member of the United Negro... words are hard. As a member of the United Negro Carl Fund, a Carl is a terrible thing to waste. So don't keep me waiting, because you should be watching. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.